Good morning. All right, we're going to pick up where we left off with Avon. Avon and Connor were outside, and Avon has just asked Connor about his dad, and he kind of shrugged his shoulders, and Avon was a little sorry she asked. So let's see what happens next. Book was upside down. All right. I was sorry that I asked. Well, Connor said, he and my mom used to fight about me all the time. He looked out at the main street as he spoke. He didn't understand why I couldn't just hold my tics in. It made him angry. He always said to me, Connor, why don't you just knock it off? Look how upset you're making us. Just stop it. And then my therapy bills were expensive, and my dad didn't want to pay for them anymore. He wanted me to just take the meds and stop ticking. But they made me feel awful, the medicine. I think my dad would have done anything just to stop my tics and Tourette's syndrome. And when he realized they weren't going to stop, he just couldn't deal with it, so he left. Oh, I said. I'm sure your parents had problems that had nothing to do with your tics, thinking Connor's dad sounded like a real jerk. All their fights were always about me, he said. My tics, my bills. I can see why they can't stand me. I can't stand myself most of the time. I wish I could hold the tics in and pretend to be normal. I didn't know what to say to that. I was sure Connor was wrong about his parents. I couldn't imagine parents being like that. I'm sorry. I wish I could grow arms and pretend to be normal. I'd give you a hug. The corner of his mouth tipped up into a little smile. I still don't completely understand, I said. Why can't you hold your tics in? I know you said it hurts, but how? Why? Connor thought for a moment. It's like when you have a bad cough, when you get that tickle in your throat and you really want to cough, but you don't want to at the same time. You can concentrate really hard on holding it in, but it's so uncomfortable and eventually you just have to cough. That's what it feels like this painful feeling in my chest builds, and it goes up my throat until I have to bark, or it builds in my eyes until I just have to blink to retrieve it, and then it builds again, and it never really goes away, it always builds. Oh, I said, that's weird. Why does it do that? Connor shrugged and said, it's some kind of malfunction in my brain. Oh, well then can you get brain surgery? Connor laughed and said, that's a little extreme. I guess they can do brain surgery, but if only the Tourette's syndrome is super bad and dangerous. I can live with mine, so I'm not going to do any brain surgery. That would be too scary. Yeah, I grinned at him. I guess that would be really risky. I don't think I would do an arm transplant, even if it were possible, because that could have some scary side effects, too. Connor raised his eyebrows. Oh, yeah? And what kind of scary side effects would there be? Well, like what if my arms came from a serial killer and they just had to go around killing people? And what if the arms were like too dead? Like they would stick out like zombie arms the whole time. Or what if they had tattoos all over them? Or if they had horribly ugly fingers with nail fungus? Ooh, that would be gross. You've thought about this a lot, Connor said, and I sighed. Well, you have to think about these things in case the opportunity ever arises. I glanced over at the petting zoo and I saw Spaghetti sticking his mutant head over the fence. I wondered if he was looking for me. I visited him several times a day to pet him with my foot and tell him how adorable he was, for his self-esteem. Since none of the other kids wanted to pet him, I felt like it was my sole responsibility to improve his ego. Come on, I said to Connor, sitting up on my rocker. I want you to meet someone. Connor followed me across the street. I stopped when I reached Spaghetti and muzzled my face to his and said, This is Spaghetti. Connor patted Spaghetti's head without flinching. He's cute. Yeah, he's kind of a mutant, though, I said, kissing his head. A little bit like me. You shouldn't say that about yourself. Connor gave me a stern look, like he was my dad or something. Oh, I don't mean a creepy mutant, I said. We're cool like X-Men mutants. Connor smiled. Okay, I guess that's all right then. We left Spaghetti and we walked back to the soda shop, and Henry stepped out onto the porch. I thought I saw you out here, Avon, he said. "Hi, Henry. This is my friend Connor." And I felt a little warm and fuzzy in my chest when I used the word my friend. Henry smiled at Connor and then turned back to me. "Well, y'all ready for the next rodeo?" I glanced at Connor. "I'm not going to be in any rodeo." And Henry laughed. "Yeah, that'll be the day," he said. "A rodeo without Avon? Well, say hi to Joe for me." And he started to walk back inside. "I don't know any Joe," I called to Henry. "Do you know a Joe?" Henry just chuckled again and did that same little hand wave like he does when I told him something about tarantulas. "You're such a joker," he said, and he turned and went back into the soda shop. "That was weird," Connor said. "Who's Joe?" "I really don't know," I said. "The owner of the park's name is Joe Kavanagh, but I guess no one ever sees him or seems to know anything about him. The accountant told my parents that he never visits this park, and he owns it." I leaned in and lowered my voice. "And get this. Pictures of all the Kavanaghs have been removed from the museum." "Whoa, that is strange," said Connor. "I wonder why." "I don't know, and I found this old storage shed behind the buildings, and it has 7 do not enter signs on it, and an old broken handle that was padlocked. I couldn't get the doors open, but you might be able to. Want to try?" Connor nodded excitedly and said, "Yeah, let's go." I led him down the short trail until we reached the old wooden shed. It looked like it was on the verge of collapse, much like several of the other buildings at the park. "See all those signs?" I said. "Cool. I wonder what's in there," Connor said. And after a few tugs and grunts, Connor was able to slide the door open enough that we could squeeze through the opening. I scraped my nose a little bit on the old wooden door, and I hoped I didn't get any splinters in my face. Getting them out would not be fun, and hard to do with my feet. Connor and I looked around the stack of boxes, the piles of junk, the shelves with old stuffed things and books and papers and props. "Where do we begin?" I asked. I looked up, and I saw a box perched at the top of one of the old bookshelves. The writing on it was faded and water-stained, but I could just barely make out 3 letters. A, V, then there was a space, and an N. "Check out that box up there," I told Connor, and he looked at it and read the letters A-V-N. "Wait a minute," Connor barked. "Avon? That's like your name." I snorted. "Of course not. Not Avon. I was thinking Kavanagh. That has those letters too." "Oh, right." Connor smacked himself in the head. "That's kind of stupid of me. Well, how do we get it down?" I looked around the room for the ladder or something. "I could try headbutting it off the shelf," I suggested, and Connor laughed. "If we can find something for me to stand on, I think I can get it down." So we found an old little table covered in old documents in one of the corners. Connor moved the papers off the table and dragged it to the bookshelf, and he climbed up and he brought down the box, and then he placed it on the table and opened it. "This stuff is old," he said, pulling out a book that looked like it had been soaked in water and left to dry in the heat repeatedly. Though it was badly damaged, we could make out the big, hairy tarantula on the cover. "More tarantula stuff," I mumbled, studying the cover. "Yeah, what is the deal with all these tarantula drawings and pictures?" Connor asked. "Well, someone I know, I guess, was really into them at one point. There are tarantula pictures in the soda shop and tarantula displays in the museum." Connor pulled out another book, and it was a sketchbook. The pages were brittle, and they made crinkling sounds as Connor turned them. "Careful," I told him, as the corner of one of the pages broke off. We studied the sketches. There were several drawings of horses in a stagecoach pass and, of course, of tarantulas. There were also detailed sketches. A sketch, one that was particularly beautiful, was of a necklace with a blue stone in it. Connor pointed to the date on one of the pictures, 1973. Someone made these over 40 years ago. We looked through the rest of the box and found some horse figurines, an old hairbrush, and a glass case that reminded me of an aquarium. Why would there be an aquarium in here of all things? Maybe it's not for fish. Maybe it's for something else, Connor suggested. I carefully turned the fragile pages in the sketchbook with my toes, and I stopped on a sketch of a tarantula. It was lifelike. Someone had spent a lot of time sketching every tiny hair on each of the 8 legs. Someone who clearly had a serious interest in those giant spiders. I think you're right, I said. The next day, after school, Mom was checking out a beef delivery for the steakhouse, and Dad was dealing with a chicken that had gotten loose from the petting zoo, and then I heard a knock at the apartment door. I put down my e-reader, and I got up to see who was there. I had been reading this new book called Stargirl. I picked it for 2 reasons. One, it took place in the Arizona desert, and I was doing everything I could to come to terms with living in this new situation. I thought reading an interesting story that was set here might make me view my own world a little differently. And 2, it was about a girl who totally didn't fit in with anybody. She is completely her own unique self and doesn't care what anyone else thinks. I wish I could say the same thing about me. I heard the bark even before I opened the door, so I knew it was Connor. I asked him how school went as we walked down the stairway. Okay, he said. A couple of kids barked at me today. It's so embarrassing when they do that because I can't help it. I always bark back. I scowled. They wouldn't get away with that if I was around. And I wasn't kidding either. This injustice would not stand. The unfairness would not be tolerated. As soon as I learned how to use nunchucks, well, maybe. Connor then just asked how my day was. And it interrupted my little daydream. I didn't see you in the library, he said. I didn't want to tell him that I had eaten lunch in the bathroom stall. Nah, it was okay. I didn't go to the library because my mom doesn't want me to skip lunch anymore. It makes me cranky. Gives me low blood sugar. He smiled. Yeah, it's too bad we don't have any classes together. Maybe you can stop by the library after you eat lunch, even if it's only for a few minutes. Oh, sure, that sounds good. How about some ice cream? And before I could answer, I stomped up the steps to the soda shop. I waited for him to open the door for me. Not that I wasn't capable of opening the door with my chin and my shoulder. I just figured I'd let him be a gentleman. But he opened it begrudgingly and scowled. I don't think I want any ice cream. How can you say no to free ice cream? I said as I walked to the counter. Didn't you know that I'm a VIP here? I get free ice cream, free coleslaw, free arrests, and all the free gold spray-painted rocks my heart could ever desire. I told Henry I wanted a double scoop of mint chocolate chip in a bowl. While he scooped the ice cream, I asked him, Hey, what did you mean about the rodeo the other day? When was the last time Stagecoach Pass even had a rodeo? The arena looks like it hasn't been used in about 100 years. I looked at Henry, and he was just standing there staring at my torso. His mouth hung open. The scooper in his hands dropped to the floor. What? What happened? I asked him. What on earth happened to your arms? Henry said, and he seemed extremely concerned. Connor and I glanced at each other and giggled. Henry, you know I don't have any arms, right? Well, you used to, he declared, and he started confusedly looking at the space where my arms should have been. Did you lose them in a horrible riding accident? What? I asked. Yeah, he said a little more clearly. That's right. You were in a horse riding accident, weren't you? That's what happened. No, Henry, I said. That's not what happened. Yeah, come on, like a horse trampled my arms off? I mean, just trampled my arms off? Henry's face seemed to clear up a little bit, and then he looked at Connor and said, What would you like, son? As Henry continued to scoop the ice cream, Connor whispered to me, That was so weird. And it was, and that's where we're